Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host and Chief Shark Officer. Let me tell you about two amazing sponsors who make this show possible. Let's talk first about Inbound. From marketing to sales and commerce to CX, Invoca's active conversation intelligence platform enables revenue teams to create better buying experiences, drive more leads, and increase revenue. Trusted by top brands like Dish Network, Mayo Clinic, Mutual of Omaha, and ADT, the Invoca team is doing some amazing work in turning conversational data into automated action to enhance digital touchpoints and human interaction. Now let's talk about Outbound. I hope that you'll take a look at Drips, the founders of conversational texting, where they use conversational AI to help you reach customers where they're most responsive, and that's on their phones. And working with major brands like 3 Day Blinds, Liberty Mutual, Credit Repair, and Gainsco, Drips is leading the way for some of the biggest brands in the world to improve engagement rates and outcomes for their prospects and customers. And now, back to the show. Brands in a cookieless world have a lot to consider. How will they maintain relationships with consumers and pull them back to their websites without leveraging a small piece of technology that's been a crutch for so long? What will this do to brands and agencies as they explore experience in the relationships with consumers? Will a digital renaissance begin in a cookieless world? Ricardo Diaz is the Chief Digital Officer at Omelet, an independent creative ad agency. And on this episode, we'll discuss creative relationships in a cookieless world, a renaissance in digital marketing, focused on improved digital experiences, first and third-party cookies, partnerships, how companies of all sizes maintain this with transparency and honesty, Austin Powers and making DVDs, Pascal and Cobol, sharks in the Zambezi, eating breakfast and coming up with a name, Laker greats, a dad joke for marketing campaigns, and a lot more. So let's tune into a Chief Digital Officer with a Chief Shark Officer on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. Tell us a little bit about your background, your career today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kenneth. I have an interesting background and I kind of fumbled my way into advertising. I was a computer nerd growing up in LA, graduated with computer science degree in 1999. And in 99, the internet was a much different place, but I knew I kind of wanted to do something with the internet. I liked it. I can't say I'm a fortune teller, didn't know it was going to blow up to what it is today, but I really enjoyed kind of the promise that the internet had.
Wait, let me stop you there. What languages were you studying? Java, JavaScript?
Oh, no, I'm an old person, Kenneth. Pascal.
Oh, you're COBOL. Pascal
and COBOL and Fortran are the languages that I started learning from, which Pascal is actually a really great language to learn. It's a pretty easy one. Now they like learning through Java, I think is what the colleges are teaching you. But then I graduated college and came back to LA. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with creative people. And I got a job at a production agency making websites for the entertainment industry. Movies like the Austin Powers and the Matrix and that era. And I was also making DVDs, if you remember those things back in the day. I was authoring DVDs and making websites. And one of the DVDs I authored in our only advertising client was this DVD we made for BMW The Hire, the film series. I don't know if you remember that. That was branded content before the term was around. And I was able to work with that agency. I learned a little bit more about the industry and I got intrigued. So I kind of left that production agency and started at Day Los Angeles in 2007 as director of creative technology. And that was really like a second education for me, learning the advertising world, learning how the sausage is made, how big brands work with big budgets and make huge impacts into culture. And that was really fun and a great part of my career. I also was a great time learning. It was when digital was coming into the big agencies and learning how to use digital. So that was a really fun time. I also worked with TBWA at a global level and helped kind of bring in creative technology into different offices around the world. I left there around 6 years. I wanted to go somewhere smaller, went to an agency called Zambezi here in Los Angeles. And then around 2 years later, kind of started at Omelet, where I'm at now. I'm having a great time there. Recently got promoted to Chief Digital Officer and really excited about the future.
So why the name Omelet? I know agencies always have catchy names, but
there's no real like quirky answer for this. The founders just were out of a list of names, and they just looked at what they were eating and literally called it an omelet.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly well, because there's so many that I know that are just named like jumping
Yeah,
frog
I'm not even
or
going to try to
you
try to
know,
justify that.
red panda, and it just never makes any sense.
No.
So let's talk about then where we're heading with cookies. Tell me about how you're seeing a cookieless world and how that will drive agencies into what I know you've referred to as sort of a renaissance in digital marketing.
Yes, that's a loaded question, and I'm going to take a couple of steps back. Like the thing I really enjoy about like the concept of a cookieless world is that if you think about it, the digital marketing is fundamentally changing. You know, right in front of our eyes. There's this, you know, what 380 billion industry that's actually going to change how it works, and that's pretty scary. And but I also think there's a lot of opportunity in that. You know, and I think it's changing. And there's a couple principles that I see happening. There's two things. One of it is regulations are going to continue to evolve. So that's one thing that I think, you know, that you know, to what you're alluding to. What we think is okay in 5 years may not be the same that what we think is okay and acceptable in 10 years. You know, the cat's out of the bag, and this is going to be an ever evolving puck, and it's going to continue moving. You know, consumers are starting to finally, I'm not saying we're there yet at all, but are starting to start understanding the value of personal data. We're just barely starting to touch on that, and I think this is one of the first steps. You know, so that's one thing to think about is as consumers are starting to care, and more importantly, regulators are starting to care even more, right? So that's going to be a moving object, right? The other thing is that this allows is relationships are, I think, more important than ever. Relationships with your audience, and what do I mean about that? I kind of mean that first party data. You know, now we have to rely more on the data that our consumers give us directly. We can't buy our way into learning about our audience anymore through third-party cookies. We have to either partner with some trusted company, maybe one company, or work on how to get a better relationship with your customers so that they can feel that they can give you their personal information. You know, so it's that trust, it's that authentic. You're being authentic to them and having that relationship, you know, and that's what I think is really interesting. You know, you know, third party cookies were a little bit of a crutch that we leaned on a little too much, and now we're going to have to go back and build that relationship a little more. So how do you build that relationship? There's going to be a bunch of ways, you know, loyalty programs, partnerships, like I just mentioned. But one of the ways I do think is creativity, right? Creativity is a way that you can break through and create some of those relationships with your customers. Digital creativity specifically is kind of how I see a lot of promise on how we bring back some really cool digital experiences, giving consumers reasons to come back to your website, you know, having programs that, you know, ask for an email address but give value to the consumer. That value exchange is more important to you. It's not just, you know, creativity and storytelling, it's also that value exchange. So we're going to have to rely on those principles that, you know, we had to rely on before when technology kind of you know, started in advertising, and we're going to have to go back to a little bit of that. And I really am liking, you know, the possibilities of making really cool, fun digital experiences, also valuable utility types things to build that relationship with consumers and have them give you more of their information so that you learn more about them.
For Shiggles, let's back up. And obviously, I get smartest audience on the planet, but define what's going away in the form of cookies.
All right. So, you know, their cookies, there's such a thing as first-party cookies and third-party cookies. First-party cookies are cookies that you get information directly from the customer. If I go to your website, I'm giving that information. Third-party cookies are other companies grabbing that information, and companies that you're not aware of grabbing and putting their cooking tracking you on different websites. So you go to a website and you may know, you know, you go to the Nike website, you know, may know Nike's getting some information from you, but what you don't know is there's a lot, like 20, 30 other, maybe hundreds other companies grabbing some other information from you, you know? And so that third party cookies is going away, you know, and that's a good thing. You know, that technology wasn't used in the best way. And there were some privacy considerations that we had to think about from a consumer point of view. So, and so now we have to work with first-party cookies. And another point, and so that's a difference between the third-party cookies and the first-party cookies. Third-party cookies are from what other third-party companies that you don't necessarily are visiting or aware of are gathering information from you. First-party cookies are direct kind of exchange of data from the company that you're visiting. And now that third-party cookies are going away, a lot of the data and marketing metrics that we're used to are also are kind of going away too. So that's the hard part. That's a lot of the metrics that we depend on to make some marketing decisions are going to change. And we have to figure out as an industry, how we start judging engagement or success, and that's going to be changing as well based on the data that we're getting now the data that we're not getting that we were getting before. Hopefully that made sense. That was a little.
Yeah, no, completely. So with what's driving a lot of the personalization, how is getting rid of all cookies going to improve the customer experience?
That's a great question. And one thing I want to make a point of is that I'm not against ad tracking. First party cookies are not going away. They're actually getting way more important. And I actually like ad tracking. I like, if done transparently and responsibly, I think that's a very great way to understand what I'm going to be interested in. If I go to a web page, I'd rather have ads that speak to me than things that have no relationship to me. And that connection, having ads that speak to me, it makes for the best consumer experience, the best brand experience, and the best financial situation. So it is an important thing that we have to figure out. The thing is, the technology stack that we had running it before wasn't the right thing, and we're fixing that now. And we're moving away from some of the third-party cookies and some of the things that were bad with that system. But because of that, we're having to figure out a new system, But again, ad tracking is works. I think when we figure out ad tracking, everyone wins. The brands, the consumers, and that experience is great for both sides. Brands aren't losing money on wasted media. And consumers are getting a better user experience with ads that they actually enjoy and want to get, So I do think, and this is a, $350 billion industry. We have to figure this out, We have to figure out how we can make money in a transparent way on the internet, not just for the big companies, but also for the small companies, more importantly for the small companies. And a problem with this first party data is that the bigger companies are going to get bigger. The rich are getting richer. The Apples, the Amazons, the Facebooks. There's a problem with this. They have a lot of the first party data that all the other companies want to tap into, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do and those industry leaders and how they kind of lead the charge, and they're going to want to hold on to their chips and their cookies. But it is important for us to figure out how we can make a decent money on the internet transparently and honestly.
What's your advice then to that small to medium business then to design a personalized experience? Because to your point, this is going to be ridiculously tough. Yeah. And just the Fortune 1000 and the major publishers are going to collect all this information. And we've been talking about teaching people to leverage data, but telling a small to medium-sized business that doesn't really have a strong data collection business, it's going to be tough for them.
For sure. That's a great question. And I try to think about that a lot because I think it does help with the evergreen nature of the internet. We have to figure out how we can democratize making money on there. And the small companies have it the toughest. They have to figure out like partnerships, right? Maybe there's partnerships they can do. They're going to have to lean on the big companies like Facebooks and Instagrams and Twitters of the world to see, like, they're going to have to use some of their platform. They're not going to be able to completely isolate it, but they're going to have to find ways to, using things like Squarespace and Shopify to quickly put up websites and find reasons for people to visit them as opposed to going and visiting their Facebook page or their Facebook group page. It's more of having that ownership of that landing page that you have on the internet Luckily, there are some tools that you can ramp that up pretty quickly without knowing too much code. But then it's also like making some content, revising some of that content, refreshing that content, so there's reasons for people to come back. Having a newsletter, email CRM is another thing that's gonna get more important and could be something that a small business can lean on. But it is going to be tricky. Things are going to get messier before they get better, and it's going to be an interesting, crazy next couple of years.
So when you think of the creativity that will come as a result of this, from a positive standpoint, where do you see that creativity shining through?
Good question. I think an interesting application of this is that we're going to be making more marketing experience type of websites. It's not necessarily the informative, hey, come here for this or that. It's more of like making experiences that we were kind of building before. Is it a video game? Is it a quiz? Is it some sort of thing? It could be a question. It could be a question of the day. Something that kind of you're trying to interact with the consumer. I love the internet, and it's progressed so much since when I first started playing around with it with WebGL, and VR. You can make so many really cool experiences today that you couldn't do 10 years ago. Making worlds in online is super fascinating, and we may not be exactly there yet, but that's kind of where I see us growing into. So thinking one aspect, the way I like is just experiences online using a lot of the modern kind of web technologies. We really haven't pushing the envelope on that from a marketing point of view, and I think hopefully we'll get there.
So how do we make our content better for consumers from a more creative standpoint to pull them in, since we now know that Google's ranking that is the number one factor?
Yeah, well, the discovery problem is something that we deal with our clients all the time as well. The clients don't want to be on social platforms, and they want to be able to better understand how users are coming to their site. So that's something we have to deal with our clients that I think is going to be harder. It's still it's a very hard situation right now, where a lot of consumers are going towards platforms and are staying there mostly. That's the thing I didn't love about Facebook's and the Instagrams of the world, is that it was kind of a walled garden, and now that's what most people's internet experience is. Making content that speaks to your audience, making repetitive content that to come back to a series. Maybe it's blog posts for something back then, and having some thought leadership that is different. You do have to understand the user journey. SEO is a big part of that, and something you have to spend some money on to understand. Amazon's of the world, competing with them, you're not going to be able to compete with them as a small company, but you can make some different content, and also experiences. Is it asking for an email so that you get a newsletter and get some more information, or some more personalized information, and then also showing what you get from that value exchange. I think that's what brands are starting to do more, is understanding that consumers have a lot of different ways to spend their time on the internet. What are we going to do for them? And that's going to be more important. Why are we going to come to my site, and having content that speaks to the audience, understanding that, and is differentiating from some of your competitors is I think even more important today than it was yesterday.
What's the number one recommendation you would make to marketers and brands today who are looking at making changes going into a cookieless world?
Data analytics is more important than ever, and having some of that skill set in-house is going to be imperative moving forward. Understanding how you can use that information in a transparent and responsible way is going to be a very important thing for the future.
All right, Ricardo, you're an LA guy. So I ask this of everybody that's been on my show. What is your favorite kind of shark, and why? You got a lot of baby great whites in particular that are 100 yards off the coast in LA, off the beaches there.
Actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kenneth, but the Zambezi shark is a bull shark that can both be in salt water and fresh water.
Correct.
So I love the fact that shark can be both in fresh and salt water, as an adaptive and change, and I kind of like that. So because of that, it's my favorite shark.
the Zambezi shark, or the Zambi shark, has been found in Zambezi River in Africa. It's been found in Mississippi River, and it's also been found in Lake Nicaragua. And
Wow,
there's a
that's
whole
weird.
story that goes along with that
That's interesting.
as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting shark that can live through both. All right, Ricardo, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
Looking forward to it.
All right, number 1. You work at an agency called Omelet, so there's obviously an omelet question. Denver omelet or Spanish omelet?
Denver omelet. I like ham.
It's a good traditional omelet.
Yeah.
All right, number 2. You're an LA guy. Kobe or Magic?
Woo! That's a hard question, Kenneth. I think Magic, just because he was such a legend when I was first getting into basketball at a young age. Kobe, I grew up with and was probably more impactful in my career or in my life. And actually in my career, I worked with him a little bit. But I would say Magic.
Yeah, Kobe, he's a sentimental choice because he passed away and he also had 5 rings. And it'd also be easy to say that he wasn't as good without Shaq. But you could say the same thing about Magic, who was outstanding, and he wouldn't have been nearly what he was without Kareem. So
I've been lucky enough to have both legends on my favorite basketball team. So that's amazing.
It's pretty hard to argue against either one of them. All right, number 3. You mentioned working on some Austin Powers movies.
Yes.
Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me in 99, or Austin Powers in Goldmember 2002.
Spy Who Shagged Me. Classic.
It is, except that Goldmember had a really good focus on Dr. Evil. So it was
That's a good point.
So, all right, number 4. We've been talking a lot about cookieless. And I will tell you this fun fact. Do you know why cookie campaigns have always been my favorite campaigns?
Why?
Because they're very delicious. But number 4, you can use that one later. Number 4, chocolate chip cookies or macadamia nut?
Chocolate chip, without a doubt.
I don't know about that, but good enough.
I'll go to my grave on that one, Kenneth.
All right. Number 5. And the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
All right. Good man. All right, Ricardo, where can people find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing at Omelet and more?
You can find me at Ricardo Diaz on the socials and ricardodiaz.com, and then visit omelet.com if you want to learn more about my agency. Thanks so much, Ken, for having me. This is awesome. This is great.
Awesome. Ricardo, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you.
So there was my conversation with Ricardo Diaz, the Chief Digital Officer of Omelet, an independent creative ad agency. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, consumers are starting to understand the value of their personal data, and regulators are better understanding this too. More brands, especially the small to medium-sized ones, are starting to realize more the value of first-party data. This will force many to have a better relationship and/or partner with someone. Keep your eyes open for partnership possibilities. Some of these may create real opportunity for your brand. Second, love disappointing third-party cookies, having been a little bit of a crutch that we leaned on a little too much. Quite simply, if the most creative relationship you've had with a consumer was by a cookie, well, now's the time to build something different. Cookies can provide great value, but there has to be something more to get people to want to come back to your website. Third, will marketers focus more on the marketing experience of websites? I hope so, and I hope that it's not just through gimmicks, but really ways to connect with customers. The focus is good. My hope is for more. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm so thankful to everyone who listens. Thank you to the amazing sponsors Invoca and Drips. Please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show. Another cookie to consider is the fortune cookie. I hope that you'll find great fortune in life, especially when you join us here on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.